Hello, and welcome to what we hope is the first of many opportunities for us to have mini sessions on professional development. Today's topic is Practice 101, how lower level coaches can accomplish their objectives in 101 minutes of practice. Now, we're fully aware that as new coaches or even veteran coaches, there are so many questions out there. Questions like, who do I go to for this? What do I do next? Where should I be at this time? When is the next time or the first time or the best time to do this? Why am I even doing this? And how do I do this better? Well, we're hopeful that our staff is providing the answers, and many more answers than questions. So today we're going to talk a little bit about practice, but before we can start talking about practice, I want to bring to the forefront some information from a book called Atomic Habits from James Clear. And James talks about systems. And I think it's an interesting way to approach this topic. Because as coaches, we have been programmed, as educators, as professionals, we've been programmed to focus our work around goals. And James is not saying that goals are bad. He's not saying that they do not have a place. But what he is saying is that at the end of the day, and I'm going to quote this, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And so before we can talk about practice, it's important that we talk about systems. We can't deny that every athlete at every level of the sport wants to compete. Whether they're professional or whether they're in youth sports, part of the reason that they're doing it is because they want to compete. They want to get out and enjoy the thrill of competition. And we want that for our athletes. We want to be able to help them get there. We also want them to grow and get better. And so let's take some time and peel back the mysteries on how we as coaches make some of those decisions that impact them as athletes. It's important to talk about the systems. I would say that 98% of the meetings that I have with parents and athletes revolve around some sort of question with communication. Parents don't want your job. Parents don't want to do your job. Athletes don't want your job, and athletes do not want your job either. They respect the work that you're doing. Parents respect the work that you're doing. But what they do want to understand is the system in place so that they can play their role as well. I hear that from parents over and over and over again. They just want to understand so they can support and encourage and do their part. So the first part of in a system, or one of the fundamentals in a system, is that we are transparent. And we are out there in the front communicating what we believe in. We do this in the classroom as educators. We have no problem creating a syllabus and putting the information out there. The policies that we have, the expectations for our athletes, what they need to do to be prepared when they come to class, or to be prepared before class even starts, the first day of the semester. Sometimes there's expectations or preparations that need to be done before they even start. And we give them a schedule of assignments. And we think nothing of it in our class. In fact, we use this information to evaluate and assess. We should be doing the same thing with our systems within our sport. Peel back the layers. This is most likely a time where you would be explicit about what you expect from an athlete on a daily basis. And this might be where you talk a little bit about preparation. Be prepared every day. And what does that mean? It might be where you talk about be consistent. This is what you expect from an athlete. Be consistent. How do you get into the starting rotation? Be consistent. I need to know as a coach what I can expect from you on a daily basis. Be consistent. It might also include the growth mindset. And as an athlete, you want an athlete to accept, embrace, and address areas of growth. So all of these things can be involved in the system that you have. And it's important to commit to it, regardless of what happens throughout the course of the season. Commitment does not mean bold-headedness, moving forward, regardless of what's going on around you. It means that you have a system in place that is flexible and that is fluid, and that you can reflect and embrace the flexibility. You need to be able to answer this question for your athletes, just as you do in the classroom, just as you want your boss at work to do for you. It may be phrased differently. It may not be, how do I earn an opportunity to join my teammates between the lines in a competition? What's that question saying? How do I X, Y, Z? How do I move up? How do I get to be a starter? How do I get to be a contributor? How do I get a new position at work? You need to be able to answer that for your athletes. And it's okay to be explicit and answer that for your athletes. So I think it's important to have that system conversation before we start talking about the practice, the daily work in practice. Now there's two things that I want to really focus on in practice, because I know our coaches, and I know that our coaches know their sport. And if there's anything that gets them excited, it's working with the athletes in practice. That's the first thing we want to do when we get a new job, and it's the thing we want to spend the most time on, and I love that about our coaches. So I just want to maybe propose just a couple wrinkles to that practice development. And the first one is thinking more globally, thinking about the vision you have for the season, and taking 9 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks of a season, and sitting down and looking at the entire season overall. And what I would challenge lower level coaches is at that point in time that you think about the value of a day off. And I want to talk a little bit more about this. The National Athletic Trainers Association put out some information recently on youth sports safety recommendations. And I know you can't see maybe all of this, so I have the link, and I'll hand out the PowerPoint and you can have that. There's several things that are listed here. Talking about specialization, you should delay specializing in a sport until you're beyond the youth ages. As you mature, that's when you can start looking at specializing a sport. One team at a time. If you're in the midst of a volleyball season, focus on volleyball. Don't be doing soccer after volleyball season. Less than 8 months per year. One sport, you should not be doing that more than 8 months per year. You should not be playing basketball 12 months out of the year. Okay, less than 8 months. No more hours a week than ages in years. So I've highlighted this one down here. No more hours a week than ages in years. So adolescent and young athletes should not participate in organized sport activity more hours per week than their age. And the example that they've listed is a 12-year-old should be putting in 12 hours per week in practice or competition, and no more. So if you think about your athletes that are 14, 15, 16, 17, and how are you using this concept to plan out their week? Okay, it's a recommendation from the National Athletic Trainers Association. The second one I want to highlight is 2 days of rest per week. 2 days off per week. For some of us, that seems like it is heresy, okay? But I challenge you, and I challenge your thinking around this. We typically have Sunday off. Most sports have Sunday off. I highly recommend that we take Sundays off. I know there are some sports that are limited by facilities and they do have to make other plans. But we take Sundays off, and then there should be another day off that week. Now, every week? No, not every week. If you have 3 competitions a week and you know you have to prep for those, then you need to plan accordingly. But this is what I'm talking about with the overall vision of your season and where you can manage taking a day off per week, in addition to the Sunday. Your athletes will benefit from it. They'll have an opportunity to rest physically and refresh mentally. And you will find the same. This is a great question to think about here. What do the coaches do on the day off? So you're coaching a lower level soccer team. You're giving your team off Tuesday. What do you do on that Tuesday? Well, I know that teachers are given 1 hour of plan for every class that they teach. So when I taught advanced chemistry, I taught 3 sections. I got 1 hour of plan every day to plan for advanced chemistry. For a 50-minute class, I got 50 minutes planned. That is not the luxury that we have as coaches. We typically have 1.5 hour to 2 hour practice a day, and we have to fit the planning into a 10 or 15-minute window around our lunch period. Or we have to do it at night and we sacrifice time with our family. What if you took the day off and you planned the week? What if you took the almost 2 hours, 90 minutes of time, 120 minutes of time, and you sat down and said, this is what we're going to do on the other 5 days of the week? Or what if you went to the varsity team's practice and spent some time professionally developing yourself within the sport and having conversations with the head coach of the program and possibly even working with those athletes at that level 1 day a week? I often hear from lower level coaches, our program just isn't united. Our head coach doesn't do enough to make sure that the freshmen feel involved and the JV feels like they're part of the program. Our varsity coach doesn't come around enough to watch. Okay, I hear that. But I also think that some of the responsibility on that is for the lower level coach to go to the varsity practice and to engage in conversations with the varsity coach at that time and to ask the varsity coach, hey, what are you working on today? And why are you doing what you're doing? And is there any way that I can step in and help out on a drill? That professional development time, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, is going to pay off for the program. And the other thing you could do is engage in collaborative discussions with your fellow coaches. If you have a partner coach at your level, take 15, 20 minutes on the day off to sit down and talk about what they're observing and how you can continue to work collaboratively together. So the day off has many benefits, not only for your athletes. The second thing that I want to add as a wrinkle or as a thought, just to maybe generate some new thinking for you, is when does practice start? What time does practice start? I often go around the gyms. I head out of my office at 3:30 every day, and I stop into practices, and I see how coaches handle this. And a lot of times, coaches are, hanging out, talking with some athletes, getting ready. The athletes are filtering in. Practices are getting started anywhere between 3:40, 3:45, or later, 6 o'clock practices. I would challenge you to declare a time in the beginning of practice for individual work time. And tell your athletes up front, every single practice when we get together, there's going to be a 10 to 15 minute window, which is your time as an athlete. I'm not going to bother you as a coach unless you want to come and talk to me and you want to come and start a conversation. And maybe that's the time that your athlete knows, hey, this is an ideal moment for me to ask the coach how I can get better, how I can get into the lineup, how I can contribute more. But it's initiated by the athlete. It's also the time where the athlete knows this is my 15 minutes for me to get better on an area of growth I'm going to embrace, accept, and address it in these 15 minutes. And my coach is going to see me do it. That's the beauty of it. My coach is going to know. And some athletes may not choose to do it. And you're going to find out some things about your athletes there too. But it's dedicated individual time. When that time is up, your athletes know they better be ready to go. Whether that's 3:50, 3:55, they better be ready to go. And they also know and trust that if they're locked in at that time, you as a coach are going to value that time as well. And you're going to be efficient prepared, and they are going to get out of there because they have been productive in the time allotted. So, what time does practice start? Build in 10 to 15 minutes of individual time. John Wooden, one of the most spoken about coaches, I would say, in most definitely basketball, but in many sports as well. He created 8 principles of practice plan design. And many of you incorporate these already, but I think it's a good review. And you may not hit them all on the same practice plan, or you may not hit them all in the same week. But fundamentals before creativity, okay? We are always looking for ways to bring variety, which is important, okay? It's going to be down here on the bottom, and it's going to be listed as well. But stick to fundamentals. Use variety, okay? In your teaching, the same way you do in the classroom, look for opportunities to present information in a different way. So, if you combine those two together, think about the fundamentals of the game and how you can present them in multiple ways. Teach new material at the start of practice. I see this so many times with lower levels when I walk around. The coaches have been going for about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, and that is the time that they introduce a new wrinkle to the offense, or they introduce a new concept on the defensive side. I'm sorry. Your athletes are probably mentally spent at that point in time. The time to introduce that is about 10 to 15 minutes into the practice, when you've physically prepared your body and then you're mentally ready and aware to take in some new learning. Quick transitions between activities, okay? Let your athletes know how much you value their time, and they will respond by moving quickly from one drill to the next. Increase complexity from practice to practice. It's part of the big vision. You sit down. The best time to go into a more complex activity is the day after your day off. Conditioning for learning. If you feel like your team needs to build more stamina and they need to endure longer in the competition, do that within the concept of the drill work. Don't take time to exclusively condition. You can combine the two and be more efficient. End on a positive note. I'm going to have one more slide at the end of here where I want to just remind you of some things that are out there from Aspen Institute. And avoid altering a plan during the lesson. And I love the way Coach Wooden said that, during the lesson. Because, let's face it, as coaches, we are teachers. And every opportunity that we have with our athletes is a lesson. So I'm going to end with this slide because I think it's a good reminder. This is from the Aspen Institute, and it's a call for coaches. So basically what they're saying is, coaches, we know that there are students and there are athletes out there that need you. They need you so badly. They need this sport, okay? And these are some things that you can do to keep these athletes engaged. Know every one of their stories. Number one, establish a supportive team culture. Now, you're not going to be able to do every single one of these in every single practice, but if you print this out and you keep it in your pad folio, and those of you that know me well know that that's a running joke in our athletic office about practice planning and the pad folios that you may or may not use. If you keep it in your pad folio, you might hit one of these a week. But by the end of a month and a half, 6-7 weeks, you're going to hit them all, and you're going to cycle through again. And by the end of the season, you will hit these either 2 or 3 times each. Celebrate effort. That one, I'm sure all of you are doing on a daily basis. Focus on the skills that matter. We've had these conversations here at Stevenson about essential learning. Same applies for athletics. What is the most essential skills needed at your level? Those should be the ones that are covered as often as possible. Be a role model, which means that you yourself are valuing the time. You yourself are taking opportunities to rest and reflect. and you have a system, an organized system in place. Be coachable, look for ways to get better in your profession, and join forces. Join forces is an interesting one. And it goes back to the earlier conversation that I said about the meetings that I've had with parents and athletes. Parents want to be allies. Parents want to be engaged. They know that they have a very, very short window of time to be a part of their child's activities. And they want to be able to have conversations with them, and they want to be able to support them, and they want to align with what you, their coach, is saying. So join forces with them and let them know how important that role is and the weight of that responsibility. So once again, thank you. We hope that this is the first of many, and we look forward to future opportunities.